Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we are going to be looking at Stephen King's Cujo.
Ooh. Okay.
So, as always, we'll be drawing from the book itself, looking at the events, the themes,
Right.
and really trying to unpack some of the stuff that makes this book so creepy.
Oh, yeah.
And as I was saying before we started recording, this one is particularly disturbing, even for Stephen King.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like there's just something about a rabid Saint Bernard that really gets
Yeah.
under your skin.
I mean, you think of like a Saint Bernard as like this big friendly dog,
Right, exactly.
like a family dog.
And that's, I think, part of why it's so scary.
Yeah, I think so too.
But we're not going to start with the dog.
Okay.
We're going to start with the kid,
Okay.
Tad Crenton.
Okay.
You know how everyone has these like childhood fears, monsters under the bed?
Right.
Well, Tad has this monster in his closet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it has these yellow eyes that just like stare at him and it wants to eat him.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and so it's like
So creepy.
it's creepy enough that like a kid is afraid of this thing,
Right.
but then it starts to affect his parents too.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's almost like the fear is contagious,
Yeah.
or like maybe there is something real there.
Right. Right.
It makes you kind of question what you believe,
Yeah.
like, is it just a kid with an overactive imagination,
Mm-hmm.
or is there something more sinister going on?
Yeah, you never know with Stephen King.
Yeah, you never know.
He always keeps you guessing.
Yeah.
So this sense of unease is like everywhere in Castle Rock.
Mhm.
It's not just Tad.
Hmm.
We learn early on about Frank Dodd,
Oh, yeah, the cop.
the cop, right?
Yeah.
Who turns out to be a serial killer.
And the way he kills them is just,
Oh, it's awful.
it's terrifying.
He chokes them.
Yeah, just chokes him and chokes him. So brutal.
And even after he dies,
Right.
he's still like this boogeyman figure in the town.
Yeah, it's like he's still haunting them.
Right. This like lingering darkness.
That's kind of hanging over everything.
Yeah.
So we have this very unsettling backdrop.
Right.
Then we're introduced to Vic Trenton, Tad's dad,
Okay.
who's working on an ad campaign for Sharp cereals.
Okay. Interesting.
So it seems like a total shift from all this darkness we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But it actually brings up some really interesting themes.
Okay. Curious.
So you have the Sharp cereal professor,
Okay.
who's like the face of the campaign.
Right.
And he's like this low-key, kind of daringly adult presence in this world of like, over-the-top children's advertising.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and he's got this tagline, "Nope, nothing wrong here."
Oh, I remember that.
It's supposed to be reassuring for kids,
Mm-hmm.
but it takes on a whole new meaning when you start thinking about the ethics of marketing.
Right, especially to kids.
Exactly. Like, how much are they manipulating these kids?
Yeah, it's kind of disturbing when you think about it.
It is.
It's like they're preying on their innocence.
Yeah, and just when you think things are under control, a contaminated batch of red raspberry zingers throws everything into chaos.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
That was a crazy part.
So, like, their whole campaign just blows up?
Pretty much.
Wow.
It's like almost a metaphor for how unpredictable life can be.
Yeah, I see that.
Like, you think you're safe, think everything's fine.
And then, bam,
Exactly.
something comes out of nowhere.
And the sense of unpredictability, this lurking danger.
Right.
It's also there in Donna Trenton's storyline.
Okay, so...
So we see her struggling with her marriage, feeling trapped, dissatisfied.
Right.
And it leads her to have an affair with a man named Steve Kemp.
Okay.
It's a really complex situation.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like she's making some bad choices.
She is.
But I feel like King is trying to show us why.
Exactly.
What's going on in her head?
Yeah, and he doesn't just portray her as like right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's much more nuanced than that.
Okay, so what's her deal then?
Well, she's grappling with aging.
Yeah.
Her changing role as a mother
Right.
and this feeling of being trapped.
Yeah. I can see how that would be frustrating.
Yeah, and there's this one nightmare she has
Oh, yeah.
that really stuck with me.
What was it about?
It's called The Loudest Voice Nightmare.
Oh, okay.
And she's back in her old job as a librarian,
Okay.
trying to maintain order.
Right.
But it's like everything's falling apart.
So it's like a symbol of her losing control.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's like this foreshadowing of the chaos that's about to engulf her.
Yeah, I can see that.
And speaking of chaos, let's talk about the Cambers.
Okay.
So Joe Camber,
Hmm.
he's a blue-collar worker,
Right.
struggling to make ends meet.
Yeah, that's a tough life.
It is. And he buys this purebred St. Bernard puppy for his son, Brett.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Yeah, you can probably guess who that puppy grows up to be.
Cujo.
Cujo, exactly.
So the cameras represent like a different side of small town life,
Yeah.
like the economic struggles,
Right.
the close-knit community,
Mhm.
but also the
The
tensions.
hidden tensions, yeah.
Right, like under the surface.
Exactly. And we see these hints of it in Joe's relationship with his son.
Okay.
Like, it's not exactly a healthy father-son dynamic.
Yeah.
And then there's Charity, Joe's wife.
Right.
She seems to live in this constant state of fear.
Oh, wow.
Like she's always walking on eggshells around Joe.
That's so sad.
It is. And there's this one dream she has.
Oh no, another nightmare.
Yeah, this one's pretty disturbing.
What is it?
She dreams that Joe kills Brett with a pitchfork.
Wow. That's intense.
It is. And it really foreshadows the potential for violence in the story.
Not just from the dog.
Right, but from within the family itself.
That's a great point.
So we have these parallel storylines.
Yeah.
With Tad and his monster in the closet, Donna and her affair,
Right.
the Cambers and their simmering tensions.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's Cujo,
Right.
who starts out as this adorable puppy. But everything changes when he contracts rabies
Oh, right.
after being bitten by a bat.
And that's when things get really scary.
Yeah, that's when the true horror begins.
And King really doesn't hold back in describing the rabies.
Oh, no.
It's like the disease takes over Cujo's body,
right.
twists his nature into something monstrous.
Yeah, it's really disturbing.
It's like he becomes this symbol of all the fear and darkness that's been building up in the story.
Exactly, and it all comes to a head in this incredibly tense and terrifying situation.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat.
Donna's car breaks down.
Oh, no.
Right in the camper's driveway,
Of all places.
leaving her and Tad trapped with the rabid Cujo.
Talk about a recipe for disaster.
Seriously. That's where we're going to leave it for today.
Oh, come on.
I know, cliffhanger.
I can't wait to see what happens next.
But you'll have to join us for part 2 of our deep dive into Cujo to find out.
Okay, I'll be back.
Great, we'll see you then.
All right. So Donna and Tad, stuck in that Pinto.
With Cujo right outside.
Yeah, talk about terrifying.
And that line she keeps thinking, what's it eating in there? When Cujo goes into the barn.
Oh, man, that gets me every time I read it.
It's like King knows exactly how to tap into that primal fear of the unknown.
Right. Like, we know Cujo's out there, rabid and dangerous, but we don't know what he's doing.
Yeah, it's that anticipation.
It makes you imagine all sorts of awful things.
Oh, totally. And meanwhile, Vic's completely oblivious.
Oh, yeah, he's off in Boston and New York.
On his business trip.
Clueless about the horror show unfolding back home.
It's almost frustrating, you know?
Totally. Like, you just want to shake him and say, your family's in danger.
Exactly. And then, to make matters worse, he gets that anonymous letter.
Oh, right, about Donna's affair.
Ugh. Talk about bad timing.
Seriously, like, the poor guy's dealing with a potential PR disaster with the cereal.
And now this bombshell about his wife.
It makes you wonder how he'll react.
Right. Will he even come back knowing about the affair?
And will he be in time?
It's like King is playing with us, making us question Vic's motives.
And then there's that whole question of fate.
Oh yeah, like what if Donna hadn't gone to see Steve Kemp that day?
What if the Pinto hadn't broken down?
So many what ifs.
It makes you think about how much control we really have over our lives.
Right, like maybe this tragedy was unavoidable.
Maybe. Or maybe it's a combination of choices and circumstances.
It's like a chain reaction.
Yeah, one thing leads to another.
And then suddenly you're trapped in a car with a rabid St. Bernard.
Not exactly the best situation to be in.
Definitely not, but despite all the horror,
Right.
Donna shows incredible strength.
Oh, yeah, she becomes like a mama bear protecting her cub.
Exactly. She could have easily given in to panic.
But she doesn't.
Nope, she keeps fighting.
And that final confrontation with Cujo, wow.
It's brutal.
King doesn't shy away from the violence.
Not at all. It's raw and desperate.
And ultimately, heartbreaking.
Yeah, because even though Donna kills Cujo,
Right.
it's a Pyrrhic victory.
Yeah, the cost is too high.
Way too high.
It's one of the things that makes Cujo so haunting.
Yeah. It raises questions about the lasting impact of trauma.
And whether some wounds ever truly heal.
And then there's the police investigation.
Oh, yeah, they're so focused on Steve Kemp
As the kidnapper.
that they completely miss the real threat.
It's like their assumptions blind them to the truth,
And it ultimately contributes to the tragic outcome.
which is just another layer of tragedy on top of everything else.
It really makes you think about the limits of human perception.
And the dangers of jumping to conclusions,
Exactly, and I think it ties back to one of the central themes of the book,
which is,
that monsters aren't always who or what we expect.
okay, I like that.
Sometimes they're not human villains,
Right.
but forces beyond our control.
like a disease, a series of unfortunate events.
We're even our own internal demons.
And Cujo himself becomes this symbol of that uncontrollable force.
Yeah, he's like force of nature.
Unleashed upon this unsuspecting town.
And it's terrifying because it could happen to anyone.
That makes it so effective, I think.
It's not just a monster in the closet anymore.
Right, it's a monster that could be lurking anywhere.
Even in your own backyard.
So after everything that happened, after the horror and the loss,
Right.
what's left?
Well, we see Donna and Vic trying to pick up the pieces.
It's a long and painful process.
Definitely, Donna's consumed by guilt,
Blaming herself for Tad's death.
while Vic is struggling to come to terms with everything that's happened.
Both the loss of his son and the betrayal by his wife.
Yeah, it's a lot for anyone to handle,
And their grief isolates them from each other.
even though they both desperately need support.
It's heartbreaking, but it also feels very real.
Oh, totally. Like, King isn't afraid to show the messy reality of grief,
And how it can impact relationships.
even the strongest ones.
But despite all the pain,
Mm-hmm.
there are glimpses of hope.
Like what?
Well, we see Donna slowly starting to heal,
Okay.
Vic trying to reach out to her,
Right.
and these small moments of connection between them.
It's not a happy ending.
Not in the traditional sense.
But it is hope.
Yeah, it suggests that maybe, just maybe,
They can find a way to move forward.
together.
And that's something, right?
It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times,
There's always the possibility of healing.
and that even the most broken relationships can be mended,
Maybe not perfectly.
but enough to find some peace.
And that's what makes Cujo such a powerful story.
It's not just about the horror.
It's about the human capacity for resilience.
And the enduring power of hope. Okay, so we've talked about the characters, the plot, the themes,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's important to step back and consider Cujo's lasting impact.
Right, like how it's held up over time.
Exactly, because remember, this book came out in the early 1980s.
Okay.
And when you think about it, that was a pretty scary time to be alive.
Oh, yeah, in a lot of ways.
You know, the Cold War was still going on.
The threat of nuclear war always looming.
Exactly, and the economy wasn't doing so great.
Right, there was a lot of uncertainty.
And then, of course, you had the AIDS epidemic emerging.
Adding another layer of fear.
It was a time when people were really starting to question
Like their safety.
the stability of the world.
Yeah, the things they thought they could count on.
And I think Cujo really tapped into those anxieties.
In what way?
And well, you have this seemingly ordinary family
Right.
living in a small town.
Where everyone knows each other.
Exactly. And then their world is completely upended.
By a rabid dog.
A rabid dog, a Saint Bernard no less,
Which makes it even scarier.
right? Because you think of
Oh.
Saint Bernards as these gentle giants.
Yeah, family dogs.
Exactly. And so to see this symbol of loyalty and protection transformed into
A monster.
a killing machine, it's terrifying.
It's like a betrayal of trust, almost.
Right. And it plays into that fear that anything can happen,
Yeah, that even the things we think are safe.
can turn on us in an instant.
And I think that's still relevant today.
Oh, absolutely.
Even though the specific fears might be different.
We still live in a world with a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, we have climate change.
Pandemics, political instability
It's like that sense of impending doom.
is always lurking in the background.
And King just brings it to the forefront.
He makes it visceral, you know,
You really feel the fear and tension.
and the helplessness.
Like you're trapped right there with Donna and Tad.
It's a masterclass in horror writing.
No doubt about it, but Cujo is more than just a scary story.
Right. It's also a powerful exploration of grief and trauma.
The death of Tad.
Ugh, it's just devastating.
It's one of those moments in literature that just stays with you.
And it raises so many questions.
About loss, about the randomness of life.
And about how we cope with tragedy.
And both Donna and Vic.
They have such different ways of dealing with their grief.
Donna blames herself,
She's consumed by guilt.
while Vic shuts down emotionally.
It's like he's trying to numb the pain.
And it creates this distance between them.
When they need each other the most.
It's heartbreaking to watch their relationship fall apart.
But it's also a realistic portrayal of how grief can impact a marriage.
Yeah, it doesn't always bring people closer together.
Sometimes it tears them apart.
And the police investigation,
Oh man, don't even get me started on that.
they're so quick to jump to conclusions,
And their assumptions ultimately delay the search for Donna and Tad.
which could have made a difference.
Exactly. And it highlights how even those in authority
Can make mistakes with devastating consequences,
and how bias can cloud our judgment.
preventing us from seeing the truth.
And then there's that whole theme of fate versus free will,
Oh, yeah, like how much control do we really have over our lives?
because you have all these seemingly random events.
Donna's car breaking down, Cujo getting rabies.
It's like a chain reaction leading to this inevitable tragedy.
And it makes you wonder if any of it could have been prevented.
Or if it was all just meant to be.
It's a question that's explored throughout the book.
And ultimately, I think it's up to the reader to decide.
But one thing's for sure.
Cujo is a story that stays with you long after you finish reading it.
Yeah, it gets under your skin.
It makes you think about the fragility of life
The power of fear
and the importance of cherishing the moments we have.
with those we love.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into Stephen King's Cujo.
It's been a wild ride.
It has, but I think we've covered a lot of ground.
From the characters to the themes to the historical context.
And I hope you, the listener, have gained some new insights.
Or at least a renewed appreciation for the power of storytelling.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a fascinating piece of media.
Until then, keep exploring, keep learning.
And remember, even in the darkest of times,
There's always a light within us.
thanks for joining us.